something for everyone, and everyone will enjoy the 3 topics. But I think they're very, very informative, interesting use of technology, and I think you'll enjoy it. So let me jump in. Here's our agenda. I'll do a brief introduction. I'll probably only talk for 5 minutes on the introductory stuff. This is not a sales presentation. This is supposed to be educational, so we'll make sure that it is. We will tell you who we are and kind of what we do very briefly, but it won't be, I promise you, it won't be a sales presentation. We're going to talk about the New Orleans project, which is a very interesting project. I'm sure some of you are aware of it. My friends Jim and Nathaniel are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some novel ideas that we've used in some various states to self-fund a case management system, which I think you'll find very interesting. And then we're going to close with a short discussion on digital evidence management that we've implemented in a large state in the Midwest. So a couple of housekeeping things I almost forgot. There is a chat in the app. So if you've got a question, you can throw it in the chat. Brad there, where'd Brad go? He's around here somewhere. There he is in the back. Brad's watching the chat, so he's gonna give us a heads up. This is being recorded. You can also raise your hand, and there's a mic there. You can stand up to the mic if you'd prefer to just ask your question live, but feel free to use the chat. I had one more housekeeping thing. Let me make sure. Oh, at the end, they wanted to make sure I told you to rate the app so that we can improve these things for future years. So please avail yourself of that opportunity. So again, I told you one commercial. I promise it'll be short. I'm with i3Verticals. We're a company based out of Nashville. You can read the slide. We're a sizable company, publicly traded. We've got about 1,100, I think it's closer to 1,200 now, courts that use a case management e-filing system from our company. And we're in booth 511. So we're going to kind of whet your appetite with some of these topics. We don't have time to go too deep. So I would encourage you, if you hear something interesting, stop out at booth 511. I think our friends at Mission Critical Partners are in 512. So they're right next to us. So please stop out, or we'll give you our contact information at the end. You can email us if you want further information, but hopefully you'll find something interesting and it'll create a follow-up conversation for us. Most importantly, and we've got great turnout for this, I think we used the 2 magic words, open bar, in the invitation. So we're having an event this evening at a nice little pub called Lucy's Retired Surfer Bar and Restaurant right around the corner. It's about a 5-minute walk from here. So if you want to get out, stretch your legs, have some hors d'oeuvres and drinks and just meet some of your fellow participants, we'll be there. A few of us will be there to talk. It won't be again, not a hard sale thing. This is just a social thing. So hope you can stop out and join us. And if you come to our booth, we'll have little business card invitations, but you can also write this down and just show up. We sell a product at i3Verticals called Justice Tech, and basically this is a complete case management system with e-filing and public access features. That's as much as I'm going to talk about that product, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. If you're looking for CMS, stop by the booth. We can give you a demonstration of it. So what is unified? That was in the title of our slide, and that may be why some of you stopped by, because you saw that word. There's multiple meanings in the court community. About 25 states in the United States call themselves a unified court system. Sometimes it means they have unified rules. Sometimes it means they have a unified structure. Sometimes it has to do with funding. Our definition, for the sakes of this presentation, are unification of the data. So unification of the systems across courts, across types of courts, and across the jurisdiction of courts. So we're going to talk about several instances where we're using the cloud to unify the data and provide some significant benefits. The benefits, most of you are aware. I mean, see, if you can unify the systems, you can reduce costs significantly, the licensing costs. Much better outcomes for litigants if data is shared. So if obviously we know certain types of cases are often related together. And if the court and the participants can know those things, there's a huge value there, and we've seen that in our courts. where they've taken these steps. Public safety is important, especially for criminal cases, where if you know that something's happened in a lower court and a higher court, that can be very important for obvious reasons. And simplification for the public. One interface for e-filing, one interface for access to data. That has a huge benefit to your constituents. And obviously, the ability to benchmark the courts, figure out where additional funding is needed or additional judgeships are needed is also something that becomes available when there's better unification of the data. And our point is the cloud improves a lot of this. It removes a lot of the barriers. So it removes a lot of the cost barriers. It removes a lot of the scalability barriers. The cost of entry in particular, as you know, with on-prem systems, the cost of entry can be very high because you have to buy servers and you have to buy operating systems and things like that, and the cloud eliminates that. But probably the most important thing the cloud does is security. It comes baked in with all those security capabilities. And notwithstanding the Microsoft crash over the weekend that almost screwed up my flight, or did screw up my flight, and probably, thankfully, many of you made it. There's probably about half the audience didn't make it because of that. The cloud is generally reliable. So I'm going to introduce my friend Jim Pingle. Jim's going to talk for a minute about the New Orleans project. I think you'll find this very interesting. He's also Nathaniel's going to help him out. I think they're going to tag team this. So Jim is with Mission Critical Partners. So separate company from i3Verticals, but we're partners. We work together on a lot of different things, and they're good friends of ours and very knowledgeable folks on helping as consultants implement especially large-scale projects. Jim has a ton of experience. I'm not going to read his resume because we'd be here for too long, but many, many years in the court space as a consultant. He's now a vice president of digital justice transformation at MCP. So Jim, you want to take the mic?
Thank you, Scott. Okay, thanks, Scott. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So we'll start out talking about unification and maybe a little bit different angle on that than what Scott was talking about. And that is unification, the courts as part of the unified whole within a jurisdiction. So here in Orleans Parish, criminal district court and the criminal district clerk of courts obviously have multiple justice partners in the Orleans Parish. This is the story of a much needed replacement of the courts, the clerk's case management system. How many of you have been through technology replacement project, case management system specifically, your CMS? Complex, long-term project, challenging project, a generational opportunity really to improve things in and of itself. But what Orleans Parish and the city of New Orleans have been able to do was take a step back, use that moment where the case management system needed to be replaced, and look at the justice community as a whole. And really to make an investment in the shared enterprise resources and services that tie all those systems together here in the parish. So it's making sure that they're not looking at the case management system in a vacuum, but in the larger context of how it fits into the community. So I'm going to get that picture off of the screen, and I'm going to turn this over to Nathaniel just to talk, give an overview of the strategic approach here to system modernization. And I'm sorry, Nathaniel Weaver is with the city of New Orleans. He has been here in this community for most of his career. I think started in Columbus. Trying from a number of different angles and different places in the parish to really effectuate change, more efficient use of technology, and most importantly, and here's what I love about working with Nathaniel, he is a data geek through and through and understands the value of the data that folks are entering into the case management system every day, understands the importance of information flowing into and out of that case management system to make things more efficient. So again, he was the right person to take this enterprise view of how the court case management system fits into the community.
Thanks, Jim. So the basic problem we were trying to overcome in Orleans Parish is that historically our justice agencies did not have any common standards and did not work together in developing technology. So we were reliant on largely paper-driven processes as cases processed from 911 to the police department to the court, jail, et cetera. We as a jurisdiction decided to take this opportunity to not just address the gap that we have in our court system, but as Jim said, to try to address the larger enterprise needs that we have as a justice system. We have a lot of bullet points up here about what we're trying to achieve. I would say it boils down to making sure that every justice professional has access to the information they need to do their job when they need it in the form that they need it, whether that's a courtroom, a patrol car, call center, et cetera. We knew approaching this project that we were going to wind up with still having multiple systems. You know, a lot of people on the outside say, why don't you just buy one system that works for everybody? I'm sure, as you guys know, it's not possible given the complexity and the specific needs that your independent agencies have. Not to mention the fact that trying to get 12 elected officials to share one system is a challenge that it goes beyond the technical needs. So in the environment that we have displayed here, we anticipate still having an independent 911 system, independent court system, independent jail system, independent municipal traffic court system, police record system, et cetera. So we realized that we were going to have to take a two-track approach. So track one is to set up that common infrastructure, which is illustrated at the top there, to make sure that even as agencies use their own systems, that we have a common location where event-driven messaging can take place. So that message from the police report, when it's saved, can make it to the jail for pre-arrest data, and that information can then be sent to the court to start the case initiation process. Jim is going to talk in more detail about one of the core components of that, which is the enterprise service bus. A lot of you might be familiar with the concept of an enterprise service bus. We saw the tools in Microsoft Azure as a good opportunity to take advantage of modern cloud technology to enable that event-driven messaging through the service bus. So in addition to the common infrastructure track, we are also replacing our core systems, as Jim mentioned. Won't go into really any detail on this today other than to note that we're replacing, at the same time, we're replacing our jail system, we're replacing our court system, we're replacing our jail system, our police record system, and our juvenile justice detention system. So doing quite a few legacy system replacements. And the key to making that work, especially as we're coming out of an environment where our court and jail were operating on one mainframe. Now they're going to be split between multiple systems. We need to make sure that we have the right standards in place to communicate about events across those agencies as those systems are decoupled. I'll let Jim talk more about the specifics. Real quick though, so we did an RFP early in this process and identified mission critical partners as the company that was best positioned to help us realize this vision that we had. So we're really excited to work with Jim and his team and the rest of mission critical partners. They have been the lead on adapting our local data needs to the National Information Exchange Model standards, the NIEM standards for information sharing specifications. So Jim is going to get more into the details on that.
Okay, so we'll talk about criminal district clerk of courts as in their part of the enterprise. Enterprise is a word that Joe Wheeler taught me. And what we mean by that is this entire criminal justice community, like Nathaniel and I have been talking about. So that's kind of shorthand for everybody, every actor, every agency that goes into making things hum in the courthouse every day, including everybody that's out there answering and responding to calls for service. Everybody that's supervising individuals once they are adjudicated and come out of the system. So that's what we mean by enterprise. Now, so the objectives of this case management system as a key important part, you folks, you recognize probably that your system in a lot of ways is the hub, the fulcrum of everything that happens between arrest and adjudication and supervision, and it's the official system of record. If we're talking about the case management system, the docket is where everything happens and where all of those parties to a case need to be able to interact. But we wanted to, in these objectives, keep in front of folks in the court as well as the other partners in the enterprise. Make it clear that the objectives kind of span beyond replacing a piece of technology, go beyond replicating the screens that you see today or replicating the paper forms that you use, but really looking at ways to improve not only internal processing, and i3Verticals is the process of working through all of that with the court system, the court's actors, but again, also understanding and ensuring that data flows seamlessly among systems. There's a point I was going to make about that, but yeah, I lost my train of thought. At any point, at any rate, that program or that project is being managed just like any other case management system implementation would be, with its own PM, with interactions between the vendors, or the vendor in this case, and the folks in the court and the clerk's office, as well as the other actors. But again, it's part of the enterprise. So Nathaniel mentioned that I would be talking a little more about the technology. We're going to try not to. We're going to talk about the process and the needs of the people using the systems. So the first thing we did in trying to get our arms around this enterprise, this entire Orleans Parish community, and how to modernize systems and tie them together, was not to look at technology, but to look at the current business processes. So we spent the month of September, Nathaniel and my team, on a series of 8 workflow workshops where we put a swim lane diagram, kind of a flow chart up on the screen. Here's the typical criminal justice process from arrest to disposition. And we had folks across the community telling us what was wrong with that and how we do things here. We had conversations about how we use our existing systems or system. We had conversations about how things could be better. We came out of that with an understanding of the information flows, not necessarily bound by the technology that Orleans Parish is using today, but how it should be, a set of to-be workflows, potential integrations between the systems. So this is a busy slide. It depicts the key, I believe the slides are available. The screen cap of this probably isn't going to do it either. What it depicts is the flows in and out of every one of the information systems to ensure seamless workflow from jail booking, so the booking information showing up in a magistrate's queue so that they can create a new case without having to type defendant charges, all that information, all the way through to the parties, the defense attorney, the prosecuting attorney, the DA being able to file and receive orders as they are created in the docket, so keep their systems in sync with the case management system. And then communicating at the end, disposition, leveraging. Nathaniel talked about standards. One of the standards for describing the data is going to be Louisiana's Uniform Commitment Order, which kind of defines what needs to be on, what you'd refer to as a sentence order in most places. So that defines the data that needs to flow from the case management system to the other parties at disposition of charges and cases. So Enterprise Service Bus is a piece of technology. It's one technical option for ensuring securely, seamlessly, this flow of information. And I always make the point that this is more than just building interfaces. So here's where the court case management system takes on this bigger perspective, in that i3Verticals has a list of interfaces that they need to build. But the parish, Nathaniel didn't start with, here are the court interfaces that we need to build. He started with, here are the information flows across the community. And from that, it kind of drives integration needs among all the partners, the courts, the sheriff, law enforcement, prosecutors, and public defenders systems, corrections. And those little arrows back and forth are talking about exactly what those workflows are. We talked about both of us being kind of data nerds, kind of dedicated to making data work better for our partners. There are really 2 aspects of data. One is making sure that it's flowing what I would say transactionally. So as a booking deputy is completing an arrest, or a booking report, or booking in the jail management system, that information about that defendant and those charges needs to flow to the case management system so that the magistrates are ready to do what they have to do to set up, or the
How's
clerks
that?
are ready
No.
to set up. Get a microphone takeover again. Please stop. Okay. The other aspect of information sharing and the other way to leverage value of the data is the analytics. So, we've got court tools, you've got court case aging, caseloads, all of those metrics within the court. But the other thing that we're trying to do here is build a shared analytics platform so that, subject to data governance, data sharing agreements, crime analysts from law enforcement agencies, as well as folks from the clerk of courts, as well as the parish's criminal justice coordinating council, everybody's looking at the same set of aggregate information, being able to look at trends, reports, statistics from a shared pool of information. If you don't do that, each one of these agencies ends up with variations on its own source of the truth. Law enforcement's counting incidents and initial offenses in those incident reports. That could be a lot different than from what gets charged and what gets disposed in the court in a court case eventually. So it's important to build this platform of shared analytic data in addition to building that workflow between systems at a transactional day-to-day level. So we can take questions on the distinction between those two, but credit to Nathaniel and this program to recognize that data sharing isn't just data sharing. It isn't just throw your data back and forth over the wall and hope it sticks. It's understanding where the strategic value is going to be of that data. Some of that comes from these shared analytics. Some of it comes from a booking information showing up on the clerk's screen well in advance of generating what they need to do for a first appearance or an initial appearance in court. So those two aspects of data sharing are both key pillars to this enterprise project. So I just want to sum up by saying that the story here is taking that moment when you're making a generational replacement of a case management system or another piece of technology, taking that step back, understanding where that system fits in the enterprise, carving out part of that system replacement budget, that capital request or that grant application that you're going to make, outside of the budget for a specific technology contract, making sure you're investing in these shared resources, shared infrastructure. It's the only way to make sure it is shared infrastructure and not kind of dominated by one part or the other. So the same applies when your local sheriff or your police departments are replacing their records management system or jail management system. It's a moment for the entire community to take a step back, look at the enterprise, and really invest in that shared infrastructure for the future. So that's it for our overview of the Justice Technology Modernization Program. And before if there are questions, we can take a few of those and then move on relatively quickly. But the last thing I want to do, I want to take this moment to introduce my newest colleague at Mission Critical Partners. Heather Pettit is now our vice president of our court practice team. If you've met Heather, you know she probably doesn't need the microphone. So,
All right, let's get this to the next topic. So again, if you didn't like that one, we've got another little segue here. What was not to like, right?
it's like the one that wait 15 minutes, right?
Great job. Yeah, we're right on time. So I'm going to introduce a completely different topic. And really, it's just some idea starters for you folks. I'm going to explain how one of our customers used the CMS and the data in the CMS to pay for the system and actually create a profit center for the state. And we'll get into a little bit of detail on that. And again, if there's further questions beyond that, please stop by booth 511 and we'll talk in more detail about it. So why should you care about money? Well, obviously cloud systems are not inexpensive, right? If anybody tells you, if you go to the cloud, it's going to be cheaper, that's generally not the case. The cloud offers a lot more capabilities. It often offers a lower entry cost, a lot more security, the ability to do web-based things in kind of a natural way in the cloud. But generally, the costs of a cloud-based system are not going to be less than an on-prem system. And a lot of that is on-prem systems tend to have hidden costs, right? You just get used to it over time, supporting the servers, patching the servers, the operating system costs, all those things are they're under the IT budget. They don't necessarily get assigned specifically to the case management system. So there are some hidden costs that maybe you're not seeing on an on-prem system. So overall, the cloud can be comparable and can even be less expensive in some cases. Why does a cloud-based system cost so much to maintain? Well, you're gonna pay for licensing the software, whether it's SaaS or another type of licensing model. You have to pay all those people that are supporting that software, improving that software. That's typically called maintenance. So you're going to pay anywhere from 40 to 50% of the cost of the original system every year just to keep it going, right? And monitoring, we can't lose sight of that. Someone's got to watch, especially a cloud-based system. They've got to be constantly watching for intrusion, for hackers, not to mention just making sure things that continue to run properly. So there's a big job that when you move to the cloud, that can be, outsourced. You can do that yourself. We have customers that do their own monitoring, but there's a significant expense there. These systems are mission critical. This is the system of record, so it has to be running 24/7. Especially now that e-filing, the attorneys are expecting to file at 3:00 in the morning, so the system's got to be running. So SaaS price is usually a higher annual cost. An example, and this is from one of our customers, and most of you folks that have been in courts for many years are aware of this, but a system for really a smaller state of 5 million people, that can cost $3 to $5 million annually to do all of that stuff, to host it, to monitor it, and to pay for the licensing and improvements on the software. So it's expensive. It's an expensive proposition. So we all know it's expensive. So what can you do about it? Here's a couple of approaches, and these are actually things that we have done and we have in production. I'll talk very specifically about one of them, and then we'll gloss over the second topic. But probably the most important thing that we've done is an example that we implement in the state of Alabama. And when we talk about public access subscriptions, what we're talking about is really, so everybody's probably got a public access site on their case management system today. Okay, e-filing is a public access site, but just being able to search for records, view records, and basically do what people used to do. They used to walk into the clerk's office and they would ask for a record and they would pay $1 a page or 50 cents a page or whatever. That's been going on forever. Most folks have implemented now web-based systems that do that. That's well known. What we're talking about is something beyond that. We're talking about doing some specific things that the bar is really clamoring for in all of your states. I can almost guarantee it. Whenever you implement e-filing, the very first thing the bar will say, or any lawyer you talk to will say to you is, why can't it be more like Pacer? Why can't it provide access to the records like Pacer does? And Pacer doesn't go as far as we're going here. Pacer just provides the ability to search and download and pay for records on any case, the public side of the case. Obviously, sealed records and expunged cases are kept secured in our system as well as Pacer. But that's what attorneys want. They want access to the data. They want access not only to their cases, but they want access to other cases. They want to know what's going on with their competition. And so they use Pacer for that in the federal system. So, sorry, I kind of jumped ahead. If you don't know, Pacer is the federal e-filing system that front ends their case management system used in all the bankruptcy courts and all the district courts that are federal. So it's been around for 20 plus years and has been a very popular system with attorneys. Anyway, so ask yourself, what is your data worth? And I just pulled a statistic up because I thought it was interesting. What are the data brokers? These are the TRWs and the LexisNexis and the folks that are basically selling your data. What are they? And I just looked at the top 5. This is a huge industry. The top 5 make $21 billion a year. That's larger than about a third of the GDP for countries in the world. Okay. So it's a lot of money. The only point to saying that is the data is very valuable. The data is public record. Okay. So my point to you is you can do more to sell your data, or somebody else is going to do it for you. And that's what these aggregators are doing. They're going to collect your data. You can't stop them in most cases. Obviously, we're talking about public data. And so my point to you is there are ways to do this very effectively and generate revenue for the state or for the jurisdiction that might surprise you. And I'm going to talk specifically about some of that revenue. So let's talk about Alabama a little bit. So Alabama, they were, little known fact, they were the first state in the U.S. to implement a unified case management e-filing system back in 2010. Now there's some disagreement. I see Joe smirking over here. There's some disagreement. Colorado claims they were first, but I think and we're not going to argue about it, but they were very early into the game. A small state, 5 million people, not too small, but on the lower end of the size of states, but a big enough to kind of know better state. But they implemented CMS and e-filing. And what they did is they looked at it as, how are we going to pay for the ongoing support of this system? And they implemented basically 4 key features that go beyond the typical find my case, download the page, download the document, look at the docket, look at the register of action. That's all common. And they did that right out of the gate, right? You can go to their site, just like you go to the clerk's counter. It was the same price. And they didn't raise any fees. This should also be noted. This isn't a new tax. They implemented the exact same fee structure they had when people walked into the counter online. And then they took that further. Okay. And they implemented some premium features. And I'm going to kind of basically describe those premium features. Basically, the premium features center around one capability, and that is having the system tell me when something changes. This is very valuable. And even Pacer doesn't do this. Okay. So you can, as a citizen, let's say you're a participant in a case or maybe just an interested party to a case, you can, I think it's $30 for the life of the case, you can sign up to be notified when anything changes on that case. So that's for the public. That was an extra add-on. You don't have to pay that if you don't want to. If you want to just buy, you just want to buy an order or something, that's fine. You can still do that for the same price. It was, $1 a page for the first page and $5 maximum for whatever their structure was that they had in the clerk's office. That most of you probably already have those structures. So it allowed that, and then it allowed this additional, hey, let me watch this case. So let the system tell me, because obviously systems are really good at that, right? They can tell when things change very easily. So there's a theme here. The second one that they implement was attorney tracking, and it's generally used by, if you're an attorney, you want to monitor yourself, right? So I want to know whenever anything's put on the docket, whenever any filing comes in on my cases, anything related to where I'm an attorney of record. And this sounds very simple and obvious, but we haven't seen very many other jurisdictions that are doing this. And I'm going to show you in a second what the value of this was to especially the legal community, but the public as well, and the media and all the other folks that are interested in seeing data about cases. So attorney tracking, I can look at an attorney. It can be me. I can look at my competition if I want. It's public record, right? Mostly it's used by people to monitor themselves and make sure they're not missing a court date and whatnot. And it does some fancy things like you can say, hey, give me a 60-day notice, a 30-day notice, and a 1-day notice to any sort of hearing that I'm a party to. So a little bit of a tickler type system, which was very valuable. Case monitoring is similar, except it's on a case basis. So you can this is useful for victims. It's useful for opposing counsel. It's useful for really anybody that has an interest in a case. The media uses this frequently for large, important cases, so they kind of know that, hey, something's going on in court. But it's the same concept. It basically lets you know when anything is filed, when anything changes. Any piece of data that changes so you change an address. And it doesn't repeatedly send emails. It basically rolls them all up and will send you like a summary at the end of the day, so it doesn't annoy the heck out of the attorneys. But basically, it will notify them, hey, someone changed their address. Is that important? Probably not, but it's good to know if you're a litigant on that case. And then name tracking people and entities, so people and companies or organizations, government organizations. You can monitor those by name, so you can do the same type of thing. I can see when anything. So you can imagine the usefulness of some of these things. If I own a company, do I want to know? And it'll notify you as soon as something's filed. So it might not even get on the docket yet, and you'll get notified immediately. Hey, someone filed a lawsuit against your company, Joe's gas station or whatever. That might be good information to know. So a lot of attorneys that represent companies and represent people use this as part of, and they rebill it to their customers as a feature that really gives them a heads up and gets them on top of things as soon as possible. And then probably what they've done that I think is really clever in Alabama is they package these things up so that it's not a kind of where you're getting nickel and dimed for everything you do. A law firm can sign up and say, okay, I've got 50 attorneys. I want to have these 50 attorneys have unlimited access to it. And there's a rate that on a per attorney basis that reduces as you get bigger in the firms. But the point is, the big law firms are doing it, the small law firms are doing it, and there's kind of a price for each one that is fair and reasonable, so that's not a big expense for anybody. But the value of this is off the chart. And let me talk a little bit more about the value. And I was going to have a slide on this, but I didn't really want to get too deep into this. But we also, work with data aggregators, and we can streamline for you the process of getting data to data aggregators. So if you've got people coming in and doing public records requests, and it's creating a big burden on the clerk's office, you can automate that. So you can get the aggregators to pay a premium for that. So if TRW wants your data, and they're going to get it, it's their right to get it. We can help you put a program in place that will automatically send that data, no touch from your staff, and you'll get a higher value for that data doing that. I've heard the term about, data is like bread, right? The fresher it is, the better. A day old, and obviously it's not a perfect analogy, but the sooner people can get data, the more valuable it is. And the aggregators know this. These are people that are, selling your data to insurance companies and various other entities. And so the freshness of that data is very important. So if they can get it sooner, like on a consistent basis, there's much more value in that. So you can charge them a premium for that. This is kind of the money shot. So this is not cost, this is revenue. And this is revenue after my company has already taken a cut of this, because that's how we get paid out of this. So it's not on our system, and it's a full-blown case management system, an e-filing system, and public access system, is not costing the state of Alabama anything. In fact, it's approaching $5 million a year after everybody's paid. So that's just cash that's going into the general fund or into the judicial fund that they can use to improve other systems, to provide better access. So it's, and they didn't do that by raising taxes. They didn't do that by, they obviously had to get legislative approval for a lot of this, but they basically did this through offering premium features that the bar was really clamoring for, and the proof is in the pudding. This has been in production. You can see there for over 13 years, and it's just continued to grow every year. And there's a few dips along the way, but you can see COVID in there in 2021. All right, that's the subscription concept. hope you think that's interesting. I was certainly excited when I learned about it. The other area is fees and fines. So most courts, especially courts that do misdemeanors, traffic, stuff like that, have a lot of outstanding fees and fines that are uncollected. And this varies from state to state. Sometimes this may roll up into the prosecutor's office. Sometimes it might roll up to the state. But I can almost guarantee you in almost every jurisdiction, there's a pile of money sitting there that goes uncollected every quarter, every year, and it's hard to collect, right? These are fines that people aren't paying. So imagine if you could add 100 people to your staff without any cost. That's one of the things. We have a division that does this, a revenue cycle division that basically we have a room full of call center people, and then we have systems that will basically help find people and let them know, hey, your fine is overdue. If you pay it today, we'll give it, and they'll work out plans with people, and basically put people on the case to find that money. If you do that, you will collect about 20% more of that money if you just put a professional organization. Some of you may be working with collection agencies already. We're not so much a collection agency as kind of an extension of your CMS. So we work really tightly with the case management system and with the clerk's office so that the clerk can make decisions about, okay, we don't want this one to go to collection. There's a special circumstance here, to kind of manage it more kind of intimately with the clerk staff. But, and obviously it's an alternative. It's very popular now to not want to put people in jail, not issue warrants, not garnish their wages, because a lot of the folks we're talking about are, middle income or below. And it really, as we all know, it doesn't do a lot of good to issue a warrant for someone who's got a job and you're going to basically stop them from working or take away their driver's license and stop them from going to work. You're just going to decrease your chances of collecting that money. So this is a great alternative to that. There are differences from state to state, so your results may vary. And most likely you're doing something with this already. We can talk to you about some maybe better approaches. There is a fee, and I want to be full disclosure. Any collection agency is going to take some off the top. So typically these are fees that have gone through a period of time, and you've exhausted your ability to collect, at least based on time, and so you're going to send it to collections. So you're going to, and what some states have done is they allow an additional fee to be tacked on once it goes to collections. Some states it's 20%, some states it's 30%. But essentially, the vendor that does this is going to require about 35% for the trouble. And there's a profit in there, obviously, but a lot of that is just the cost of having those 100 people, that call center, the software, and all that stuff. So it's not an inexpensive proposition, but the point is, it is certainly profitable for a court, for a state, for a county to do this, to go after the $1 million pot that's probably sitting out there and be able to collect 20% of it. Yes, you're going to have to pay a percentage of that, but it's typically money you would have never seen otherwise. All right. Segue, our third part of our program. Was there any questions about that? And again, throw them in the chat. Brad's monitoring anything in the chat.
No.
The chat is for the 50 individuals that are online. So if you have any questions, I'm not exactly as fast as I used to be, but I can bring this mic over to you.
Didn't realize that. So chat's for the online folks, and you guys can't use the chats. Do not use the chat.
Well, you can. Just be a very quiet chat.
Kidding. Anyway, any questions on the revenue opportunity stuff? Okay. Again, 511, stop by. I'd love to talk to you about it. So we're going to shift gears and talk a little bit about a very popular topic. In fact, I just did a seminar last week that it was very well done, very well attended. I'd recommend you look that one up on digital evidence management. So my friend Andrea Dahl from i3Verticals is going to talk for a minute about a statewide project and basically some of the facets to that technology. It's really been a great learning experience for us, something we've been working on for probably 5-8 years with some customers. It's really now come to maturity and is a great product. So, you ready? Take it away.
Let's just breeze through that slide.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah, no. Good morning, and thank you guys for attending. My name is Andrea Dahl, and I am the product manager for Vault, which is i3Verticals' digital evidence management solution. Although today we're talking a lot about unification, I do want to make a point that for those of you who are attending that may not be part of a unified system, many of the benefits and the lessons learned that we're going to talk about today are really directly applicable whether you are implementing this technology at the state, the district, or the county level. So I know this is not a sales pitch, but I do think it's important that you have some perspective. Am I not coming out? Okay. That you have some perspective about Vault and what it is. So as we kind of talk about lessons learned and benefits, you have a holistic picture. So just want to run through a little bit of baseline information about the Vault solution, just to level set a little bit. So it is a digital evidence management solution, and it allows for the secure and centralized storage of content, allowing authorized users 24/7 access, no matter their location. So truly all your users need to access this content is credentials, an internet, and a modern browser. By default, Vault does not enforce any file size limitations or file format limitations. However, it can easily be configured to enforce any restrictions that you want to support your business process. So Vault is a SaaS solution, and it is hosted in the secure Microsoft Azure Government Cloud, and it's implemented by our CJIS certified professional services team. A typical implementation takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So I want to caveat that and break that down a little bit. So when we say typical implementation, that's something marketing helped me with, but a typical implementation really is one that does not require substantial customization. The Vault product is highly, highly configurable, so most of our customers are able to go live without the need for customization. However, to the extent a new feature or enhancement does need to be rolled into the project to support your go live, that's why we give a runway of 3 to 6 months. We want to make sure that our engineering team obviously has the time to design, test, and implement any new features. The other part I want to caveat is where I say initial go live. So we know whether you're implementing at the state, county, or district level, most of our go lives are going to involve some kind of soft go live and some kind of wave pattern to get the technology fully integrated. So when we're saying 3 to 6 months, that's our first go live. Some courts may decide to go live on a courtroom basis or court type basis. So that's just that initial rollout, getting the technology out and live, getting your users proficient and comfortable with the technology before we iteratively move additional groups into it. So while we're talking about implementations, my father was one of those people who always had us sing for everything. And as children, we would always roll our eyes. So I'm going to put this out there. If you need to roll your eyes, feel free to do that. That's fine. But there's a saying we have all heard that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that is so true in life, but it is really, really true when you're talking about implementing a digital evidence management solution. I think a lot of times when we're implementing, we're so focused on the technology and the features and the functions and how is it going to support our business processes? Are we going to need to change our business processes? All fair things. Those are all important. But I think oftentimes what's overlooked is the need for a solid and executed communication plan. There are probably 3 primary areas that I think are really important when we're talking about a communication plan. So I just want to break it down and give you guys some ideas and some things you should be considering. And it's probably applicable beyond just digital evidence, but specifically with digital evidence. The first thing is really having involved and active project sponsors or champions. I call these people your hype squad. That's what they are. Really, these individuals should be taking the lead and communicating with your internal users. Your internal users need to understand why are we implementing this? What am I going to gain out of it? Our business process is changing. What is the rollout plan? How's it starting? What case types, all of that good stuff. So you want these project champions communicating often and frequently with your larger internal user population. We want them excited about the technology. We don't want them laminating on whether they're going to like it, it's going to work, any of that. So the more information we can give them iteratively along, the better off we are. The second thing that is very critical is having a judicial officer selected who is really willing to take that technology and pilot it in planned proceedings. There is no point, well, very little point, implementing this technology if you can't get your judicial officers to be excited and use it. So having somebody selected ahead of time and really having them pilot it is going to be pivotal. We're looking for not just their feedback. Obviously, we want to make sure that the technology is going to work in their courtroom and that we have the opportunity to make any configuration changes that we need. But really, we want ultimately this individual to join your hype squad. And we really want them to become the primary subject matter expert working with your other judicial officers, talking about best practices, having candid conversations about what worked well, what didn't work well. And if it didn't work well, what did they do to kind of circumvent that? So it's really critical that you have that forward thinking and that practice session in your plan. And the last one is really having a thorough and well-executed communication plan for your external users. This is critical. There's nothing worse than spending all of this time and energy to get to that go live date. And then we never really communicated to our external users, so they don't really know what they should be doing with the technology. So really what we really strive to do is as soon as we get through that discovery process and we have an idea of what our target go live date is going to be, we are starting to build that communication plan for your external users. So a couple of things that I've seen be really successful are, obviously putting content on your website. We provide links, or whoever you're going with, hopefully will provide links to training content so that your users, well in advance of the technology coming out, have the opportunity to see it, understand it. We've had, court systems do direct email campaigns to their users, work through outreach through the Bar Association, lots of ways that you can get that information out. But you do want to really prepare your external users that this technology is coming, and you want to, make sure they understand how and when to use it. So if you couldn't tell, our Vault solution is currently predominantly used in prosecuting attorney and court sectors with over 83 courts currently using the platform. So I want to just break that down a little bit into some tangible terms for you, just so you have kind of an idea of volume. So to date, Vault supports approximately 29, my team was very specific, approximately 29,000 users. And what I want us to pause and think about when we think about that number is really the lion's share of those users are our external users. So yes, it's important that the technology works for your court users, your judges, all of that. But really, your biggest consumer and biggest user of that technology is going to be your external users. And I think a lot of times when people are kind of going through that vendor selection process, we're always focused on, yes, we want to make sure, one, it's affordable. We want to make sure it's secure. We want to make sure it's going to support our business processes and is scalable. But I think oftentimes what's overlooked is really taking the time to step back and think about user experience and simplified interface. So when you're talking about a solution that is going to support thousands and thousands and thousands of users who come from different educational backgrounds, different access to different technology, really making sure that that interface is simple and easy is going to be very important, and it's going to lead to higher user adaptation rates right out of the gate. Currently, Vault is receiving about 450 submissions a day, which roughly translates into about 1,800 exhibits per day. So a submission, it could be one exhibit, 100 exhibits. It's just a bundle. But we're currently seeing about 1,800 exhibits per day come through the system. So just to give you a little bit of breakdown, I don't know how many of you have digital evidence solutions that are in place, but right now, if we look at our content, about 58% of our content is PDFs, 30% are JPEG, PNG, 8% are video files, 2% are audio files, and 2% are kind of the other, PowerPoint, Word, some of that, Excel, some of that stuff. At high risk, I put a couple of statistics out here, but because I think it's important that you really understand. I know when we meet with prospects, we always ask the most annoying question: how much storage do you need? Right? So I'm not saying this is what you're going to need or not what you're going to need. I can tell you trends and what I am seeing. So right now, we are seeing about 24 terabytes per year of new submissions for a statewide implementation, and around 1.5 terabytes per year for a large county implementation. Now, I was very careful in how I worded that. I said new submissions because this represents volume, but not necessarily growth. So the other thing that we need to consider and take into consideration when we're talking about sizing for digital evidence is we want to understand time to disposition and then ultimately time to destruction. Those will help us understand kind of our trend, because what we'll see is as we're kind of ramping up, it's like a bell, I think it's a bell curve. I failed math, but I think it's a bell curve. So it kind of ramps up, and then as cases start reaching disposition, we have the opportunity to move them to offline storage, which is a lower storage rate. So we'll ultimately see this ramp up, kind of a settling, and then a slow, download as we start to be able to get rid of the evidence in our system. Any questions on that so far? I feel like that was a lot. No. Okay. I'll take that as a no. So interestingly enough, as we meet with prospects and onboard new customers, and, again, kind of one of the annoying questions you'll be asked, tell us your pain points. But it is true. We need to understand your pain points. But what we often, we hear a lot of different ones, but what we always hear are kind of generally the same four. So I wanted to just take a moment and talk to you about probably what are some of your pain points and what you should be expecting out of your technology to help you resolve them. So the first one is really largely around security. We know in today's world, depending on what you're doing with digital evidence, it's just really hard to track who's viewing it, when they're viewing it, why they're viewing it. Is anything being removed from court files, all of that. So obviously, when we move to a digital evidence solution, we have everything centralized. The concept of security becomes very clear and very easy to manage. Along with that, your system should be giving you a very thorough audit trail of every activity that's happened on any single piece of evidence that's been uploaded into your system. And what's really important for you to think about when we're talking about audit trails, they're great. We love them, and we want to be able to print. You can print them, you can download them in case you need to provide them and present them to substantiate any activity that's happened. But we also want to make sure that you have the ability to enable or disable that function at the user group level. Some of our court customers, are very specific in that their judges, their general internal users don't really have a need to see those audit trails, whereas their system administrator and their auditors do. So having the ability to kind of hide that audit trail is really important based upon your business process requirements. The one thing I do also want to note about that is we are talking about audit trails and how great they are, and it's true. But really another thing, and we're asked this all the time, that's really important for you to understand, that jury access viewing activity is not tracked at all. We have no idea what really happens when that jury gets in their room for deliberation. That activity is not tracked. And the last little piece of that is I just want to kind of talk about is, the preservation of evidence. Obviously, as content comes in, we want to make sure that it is not alterable. It cannot be altered. So we use things like MD5 hashing, but really at its core, if content is brought into the system and any changes made to it, in our system, that results in a new asset being generated. We'll link them, but we want you to see very clearly what came in and how it's been altered throughout the process. Physical storage is another one. Space is at a premium everywhere we go. More and more people. And so one of the things that our customers have really enjoyed about implementing a digital evidence solution is just the ability to reallocate areas in their courthouse for better purposes. So we know that because content can be stored, and it is stored in the Microsoft Azure Government Cloud, all of those files and the need to find the space, secure the space, retrofit the space, or take offsite, use offsite storage, all of those costs are greatly reduced when we move to digital evidence. Another big one is retention, and I think this is, well, I'm not going to say it's the biggest because they're all the biggest, but really this is a heavy hitter. We know that in today's time, that retention schedules aren't always adhered to as much as we would like them to be. It's important, but sometimes it's a little bit lower hanging fruit. So one of the things that we hear consistently pretty much is really the benefits that our customers have enjoyed by really utilizing electronic retention policy. So first and foremost, it takes and automates the queuing of files. That's the first thing. We can imagine in the paper world, people are spending a fair amount of time looking for files in, paper files so that they can be reviewed. So the Vault system automatically will queue those up. The purging of assets actually can happen in a couple of ways. Like it could be automated, it can require human intervention, or it can be a combination of both. And why this is really important is depending on how you use a digital evidence management solution, you always are going to have some content that is likely uploaded that really is not part of the official court record. And with a sophisticated retention policy or process, I should say, you have the ability to kind of really help speed up that review process for your internal users. So it may be that you say to the system, hey, you know what, we are going to automatically, anything that was not ever admitted into court, we're going to go ahead and let the system just automatically destroy that. We don't even want our internal users wasting their time to review it. However, we do want a certain subset of the file to go through a retention review and have somebody really look at it. So with the retention policy, it's really nice that you can use it to really kind of speed up that process and automate certain parts of this destruction. I think the other thing that is really most compelling that I've heard come back from our customers, at least about retention and digital evidence, is that with a system, as things are getting ready to be purged, the system can automatically take on the burden of notifying the submitter. So as a user goes through and says, yes, this file is ready to be destroyed, the system automatically notifies the submitter, lets them know that content is ready to be disposed of, and they have X amount of days to download it or contact the court to get a copy. This process used to take a significant amount of time, and now with the digital evidence management solutions, that piece can be automated. And the last thing, just quickly, we hear a lot about is obviously the viewing and sharing of evidence. So we know in this day and age, we get audio and video files that often require proprietary players. So with a strong digital evidence management solution, you should, as content gets uploaded, it automatically goes through a transcoding process, and we're able to transcode around 96% of all the file formats that are out there. I think another thing that's often really overlooked and is really nice is really just the easy access for your Court of Appeals to view admitted exhibits on appealed cases. just by virtue of giving them a login and doing a little bit of configuration on the back end, they are literally able to go in, enter a case number in view of just the admitted evidence. Just another really significant time saving. And the last thing is a lot of struggles around sharing evidence. It's everywhere. And what did I share and who did I share it with? And, did they get it? All of that. So with built-in sharing tools, it's really easy to track what you've shared, who you've shared it with, when you shared it, and when that share is going to expire so that you don't have these open-ended invites out for people to view content. And to date, just to kind of give you a sense of how beneficial that is, to date, we have in our Vault system facilitated more than over 22,000 shares. So it's a really powerful technology and feature that our users rely on pretty substantially. So lastly, just want to talk a little bit about the benefits from a unification perspective. I mean, a lot of what I talked to you about with, talk with you with about whether you're doing it at the state or more local level, those are all benefits that a solid solution should provide to you. If we step back and we take a higher look and we think about it from a state perspective, we can really kind of see two primary areas where unification brings a lot of benefits. One is in the business continuity. So just thinking about it, like consistency and standardization across courts accelerates user adaptation and expertise navigating in the solution. So as I talked about earlier, especially when you have such diverse external user population that is going to be really key to your success in using this software, you want to make sure it's consistent. I mean, it would be very difficult to have 80 courts and everybody using a different system and then everybody wanting external users to upload. So essentially we're asking these users to understand and learn 80 different pieces of technology. So it just really allows that user adaptation to happen very naturally and fast. Secondly, just the ability to apply standards and processes and best practices across all courts is, extremely beneficial. We've seen when we have or we have visiting judges or referee judges, anything like that, because the system is uniform across the courts, the ability for courts to cross-train, to cross-support is just highly increased. And then lastly, statewide financing, budgeting, and planning for the system. I mean, nobody likes to go it alone. There's safety in numbers. So I think that one probably speaks for itself. And then lastly, on the administration side, we can all appreciate, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting was one of our customers was just talking about training. And it's really it is, when you step back, it's important, but training of new employees can be standardized and centralized, helping to remove knowledge silos. And I thought about this. We all have our own way of doing things, right? Technology should offer you multiple ways, whether you like it or not, of doing the same thing. So when we, are onboarding somebody, we tend to train them through our biases, through what we've experienced or how we like to work. So being able to take and centralize that training really allows you to kind of train and onboard your people with all the best practices in mind. Reduction in system administration and user support overhead. Clearly, when we have all of our courts and all of our users using the same technology, we don't have as many issues and as much support that is needed. Not to mention increased reporting capabilities. So now you can report, obviously across across the entire state, because you're using the same platform. And so you can really begin to understand technology and how your user base is actually really using that technology. And last is really the ease of system modification and testing as business process needs needs change. We know your business processes are going to change and your technology is going to need to change to support that. And so we can imagine that if we had multiple courts and we had to make the same configuration change across 80 different systems. So just obviously the ability for your admin to maintain one system just by virtue breeds a lot of efficiency. So just before I close, I just want to share a couple of I thought they were shocking statistics with you. But really right now, 97% of Americans own a mobile phone, which really translates to about 330 million people, or 9 out of 10 people. So this is what I thought was shocking. They project 4.5 hours are spent by people on a mobile device, and people are referencing their phones up to 144 times a day. I cannot even imagine that. But now you can rest assured I want a clicker, and I want to try to click every time I do it because I'm really curious. But I think these statistics, whether or not they're accurate or true, I think what they do at least point to is the fact that, digital evidence, we all know it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, right? And it is projected that 90% of criminal cases will have digital evidence in them. So it's really important that you start thinking about and exploring opportunities for how you're going to, store and view and manage this digital content, because it's just not going anywhere. It's just going to continue to rise. Any questions?
Quiet group.
I have one job and you guys can't ask any questions.
Thank you, Andrea. Very, very useful. We do have a question.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Anyone else? Anyone?
We got 1 minute left.
Son of a gun.
Oh,
Oh, dear God. Okay. You stealthy.
Hi. Oh, I don't like talking to
Yeah, they work-
microphones.
they work well.
I have a question for the New Orleans group and the work that you're doing. A comment and a question. First, very cool work. I work for an organization called Measures for Justice, and sorry, are you familiar with us? Yeah. Okay. So I guess my question was, it's so hard because all of the data is siloed across the different areas in the criminal justice system, and that's why what you're doing is so cool, because it allows people to maybe get a peek at the system from arrest to post-conviction all the way through. My question is about, in New Orleans at least, public interest in this kind of work. If you feel like there's appetite for a dashboard so that citizens would have the opportunity to look at the criminal justice system and see the health of it.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. So very familiar with Measures for Justice. One of the things that I think is exciting about the work that you guys do is it gives us standard ways of looking at things that might be defined differently in different jurisdictions. And so that helps the public be able to compare across jurisdictions. There's a lot of public interest in dashboards, aggregated data based on events in our justice system. We have a lot of dashboards today. Unfortunately, they don't agree. So if you look at the dashboard for the district attorney's office, you'll get a different answer than you would from a city council dashboard or another source. So part of what we're trying to do through this project, and we talked more about the service bus as opposed to analytics, but part of what we're trying to do is to draw on the standardization process that we're using for the service bus to also have common naming conventions that we can use for the elements that we're analyzing in criminal justice events. And so we have an initiative underway right now to start with jail measures. That's one thing that people are very interested in. How many people are coming into the jail? How many arrests do we have? How long do they stay? But build that out so that we have a single source of truth that we can use for analytics across the system.
Very cool. Thank you.
any more? Okay, I will let you all go. Thank you. I hope you found it interesting. Again, we're in booth 511 and 512. And join us tonight for some hors d'oeuvres and free drinks. Thanks. I've got some little cards up here that just a little summary information on what we presented, and it's got some contact information. I think there might be a few on the table in the back here, but there's a couple up here. So thank you for your time, and fill out your survey.